Welcome to Psychic Holistic Spotlight. I'm your host, Josie Way, and tonight we have as co-host Kerry Cudmore and Ken Demers. And we're very pleased to have as our guest Kerry Cudmore. She is an empowerment trainer that helps empower you through some very special things like fire walking and arrow breaking and bending metal and needle piercing. The list is long of some of the challenging things she helps people do to feel more empowered. And I want to know, how did you get started?
Well, the first step for me was when I took my first step on a fire. And I was attending a retreat, and it just happened to have a fire walk at the end of it. That's how this person concluded her retreats. And when I walked across fire for the first time, it had such a profound impact for me that I decided that I needed to teach this to other people.
That, I haven't done it, but I have a friend who's an elderly woman, and he speaks highly of having done it. And, I have to admire her for having done it. She had done it quite a few times.
Yes.
Miss Ellie?
Oh, yeah, Ellie Berger. Yeah. I've done it many times. It took me a long time of a lot of thinking to actually figure out how it works. And even though I know how it works and I put my hands into the bed of hot coals, I never use my right hand because in case I'm wrong, I use my left hand. But never been wrong yet, so.
Yeah.
But it's a neat experience.
How does it work?
Many answers.
There are many answers to it. I think there are scientific answers that try to address it, but I don't think they address it completely. But I really believe that when we put ourselves into what we call a peak state, a peak mental state, that we change the physiology of our body, and it changes our relationship with the fire. We connect with it, and we're able to transcend.
Well, we're all just molecules.
Yes.
So if we spread our molecules apart more, they're not as dense, they're lighter. Fire might not have the same effect.
What's your theory?
I hate to put my theory in here. But basically what we're doing is we're becoming one with the Eskimos do it
With
for cold.
the fire.
For fire, you can do it for anything. But basically, you become one with the vibration of the fire. Once you've done firewalks, you can go to a sweat lodge, and they're putting these hot stones in there, and you just make a mental connection to the heat of the fire and become the same vibration as the fire. Well, the hot coals. Once you're at the same vibration, it's like with electricity. If you've got a hot 110 volt wire, and as long as you're not connected to ground, you can hold that wire and you don't get a shock. If you change polarity, touching a neutral wire, you get the shock. If you change your thought patterning about the potential of being burned, now you've got a different potential and you can be burned by the fire. So you become one with the vibration of the fire. Because you are spirit, like you were talking about, the energy, that energy becomes the same vibration as the fire. Or Eskimos fall in the Arctic Ocean, some of them are able to change their thinking so that they become one with the cold, and they'll be in the Arctic Ocean for 2.5 hours floating with the icebergs before they're rescued. And they're fine. Tough to do.
And I like what you're saying, because it really is about changing your mind. When you change your mind, when we access that peak state, and everybody has had this experience of being in a peak state. It's that moment when time vanishes, when everything is perfect, and that's the same energy as the fire.
Okay, well, that's another step beyond what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of different ways to language it.
Yeah, but it's more than just a mind state. It's physical, mental, and emotional and spiritual all at once.
Well, when you change your mind, it affects all of that.
You hear I've watched a lot of TV shows on this, and these scientists come on and they try and say, well, they're putting the salve on your feet, they're doing this. negative. None of that is true.
No.
Nothing. People try and connect it to religion. I was working with a bunch of guys from Texas one time, and they really wanted to do firewalks. And at the time, there was a lot of them around. So I said, yeah, I'll set you up. They had a show on TV that connected it to Wicca. And these guys were like, oh, this is the work of the devil. We're not going to do that. And they really wanted to do it, but because their mind was changed because they thought it was something against their religion, they wouldn't do it. But it's part of all religions,
Yes.
all over the world.
It's ancient.
Yeah.
It's an ancient practice.
It is. It is. And I've worked with people who have no religious beliefs at all. I've worked with people who are extremely spiritual and have very defined core values around their spirituality. And I've seen both types of people and everything in between walk the coals successfully. This is something that anybody can do.
Yeah. It's a neat experience.
It is, and I love watching people cross the coals because it's like you get to see their soul. You get to see them completely free of their masks. You get to see them completely free of their fear. And to witness that is incredible.
Must be beautiful.
It is beautiful.
Wow. Yeah.
Now you get me want to go there just to watch that.
And I have had people come just saying, I just want to watch other people. I'm really not interested. I'm not going to walk on fire. But after we do so much preparation with them, they find themselves walking across the coals anyway. And they surprise themselves, surprised of their own potential, of their own ability to get into this space.
I've never watched people's faces, so you got me there.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen many do it, but
It
I've
has to
never
be very
focused
spiritual.
on their faces for the first time. It's an interesting thought.
It's amazing, not just their faces, it's like their whole energy.
But, you know, what we should do is set a definition here.
Mm-hmm.
The way you walk on fire is very simple. You build a bonfire normally of oak. You burn it down to a hotbed of coals, which is about 1,200 degrees, and you don't want to walk on it with your shoes because it would perfectly ruin your shoes.
Yes.
But you can walk across it barefoot. With once in a while, you might get a small ouchie, but most times not. Put your hands in it. You can pick them
Yeah.
up, rub them on your skin. And we don't have a really good explanation for that.
No, it's I think of it as being in the mystery.
Yeah.
And more in the mystery is breaking arrows.
Yes.
You have to describe how it's done so that people understand. You're not standing there going,
No.
No.
And you've done this.
Yes, I
Maybe
have.
you can describe what it's like.
When you break the arrow, or when you have to, I felt like we were prepared for that, to move forward in our lives, to move forward from where we were. So when you do it, and I've done it several times now, the first time, I have to say, was far easier than the second time. And I think that once you do something, you have cellular memory, so your body remembers. Yet when the arrow is shorter, say 2 inches, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it is.
I mean,
Wait a minute. How long is the arrow?
No. The arrow is long, but if you've done it before, the arrow is 2 inches shorter. So it makes it.
Okay, let's start with the description. So there's a wooden arrow, and it has a metal tip.
A normal arrow.
Yeah, normal arrow. You could,
Yep.
Boy Scouts use these arrows for target practice. And you put the tip of the arrow right here in this little indent. It's
Yes.
a nice little arrow holding spot. And then you place the other end of the arrow on a wall or
a
other
board,
surface.
right.
I've heard that in Native American cultures they would use a tree for the braves, and this was a rite of passage. And so you put the pointy part there, the other end on a wall or solid surface, and then you move through the arrow. And this exercise to me is all about moving beyond our comfort zone. because at a certain point, it's going to get uncomfortable. And we're used to hitting a point of discomfort and backing off. And this is about hitting that point of discomfort and moving through it. Because when we learn anything new, it's going to be awkward.
Yeah.
It's going to be uncomfortable. And if we practice moving beyond that discomfort quickly, we'll move forward in our lives more efficiently.
Yeah.
So this has been done in Native American cultures and other cultures around the world, I guess?
Yes. Yes. In fact, my mentor, he read about it. And he shared it with somebody, and I wonder about this, and somebody tried it and said, yeah, this is possible.
Okay, how much pressure does it take to break the arrow?
That's the thing. You have, this part of your body is stronger than the arrow is, but our minds will tell us otherwise.
That's right.
Well, it's a very
Well, I
sensitive area.
It is.
If an arrow were to go through here, it would be very life-threatening.
I don't consider it as a strong part of the body.
This notch right here is far stronger than what you would realize. And since I have had the experience of breaking an arrow several times, I can tell you that it doesn't fail you. It doesn't fail you.
Okay, I've never even heard of this, never mind seeing it done.
And it's really, and like she said, it's like really moving through the arrow. So you're really moving through your own stuff, your own mind, your own illusion, if you will, to break the arrow.
Now, are we mentally changing through spiritual process, changing the strength of the impact point?
In this case, I don't think so. I think what we're doing in this is, let me back up a little bit. I'm a big fan of integrating into the body what we can think of in our minds. So I know that I can, write the book, or I know that I could go and teach a class, or I could do an interview somewhere. But my fear might be keeping me from doing it because I feel uncomfortable. I've never done it before, perhaps. But then, when I practice moving through discomfort quickly, I start to do things more spontaneously, less inhibited by fear. And so for me, all of these practices add up to much more momentum in people's lives. I see them accomplishing things they've dreamed of for a long time in very short periods of time. That their fear just starts to lessen and lessen and lessen.
Well, if I could do this, I could certainly give it a try to do that, whatever the other that might be.
If I can walk on fire, why is asking for a raise giving me such a problem?
Right.
Ajita.
Did you say Ajita?
I did.
I thought
I was
that
thinking
too.
Ajita.
I know, I can remember reading, 10 years ago, some football coach had his whole team walk on fire, high school kids.
Yeah.
So to empower them, to understand what they're capable of. And it had a profound effect on them, I guess, playing football, and I don't know about the rest of their lives. They didn't talk about that. But I'm listening to you talk about the Native Americans doing that with the arrow business. They would take, going back hundreds of years, of course, they would take the young boys that were coming into manhood. In the middle of the coldest day of the winter, they would take them 5 miles from the village, take off all their clothes, I guess just a loincloth, and they would have to run back to the village. And in the process of running back to the village, they would get so cold, they'd become one with the cold, and then they weren't cold anymore.
Yes. It's that peak state again.
Same principle, but different.
And your example with the athletes is perfect because athletes call it being in the zone.
Right.
Oh.
Artists call it the still point. In empowerment training, we call it a peak state.
Now, would we be safe to say people that meditate, they talk about that point of divinity within themselves? Would you equate those two together?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I find it as a similar experience. It feels the same to me.
Yeah. A lot of spiritual instructors have used the term peak experience for something along those lines, like epiphanies and things like that, where suddenly you are one with everything and you recognize you're one with everything. Or you see the divinity in someone else that normally you wouldn't have seen.
Yes.
And that becomes a very special moment.
It's a profound moment of connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's amazing to me how connection gets built in these events that I hold. When I have a fire walk, it's amazing how quickly people become very close to one
Friends.
another.
Now, when you're doing a firewalk,
Yes.
my memory tells me that it was about an hour and a half to talk to people before they did it.
Mine's a little bit more than that.
2 hours.
A little bit more than that sometimes.
So
It depends on the wood, it depends on the weather conditions, and I like to give people as many tools to access that peak state as possible.
So in effect,
Yes.
in a 2-hour period, by you talking to them, you're changing every belief system in their body concerning fire.
That's the goal.
This is the reality.
It is the goal, and I think generally it is the reality.
And how do we explain that?
I think there are parts of it that are unexplainable, that really are in
Yeah,
the
but that's
mystery.
not satisfactory to me. I need explanations.
Well, I'll give you one. Spirit assistance.
I can't hear you.
Spirit assistance.
Oh,
I mean, there's
sure.
stories in the Bible. What? Shadrach, Abednego. I think the three people were trapped, thrown in a fiery furnace and stuff, and they stepped out. They were protected. They stepped out. They weren't burned. You know, the same kind of protection.
The first time I did a firewalk, I don't remember when, I got up to the head of the lane of fires, and I'm not a channel. Well, I suppress it. But somebody said to me, go ahead, it won't hurt you. So I did it. I did feel an ouchie.
Yeah.
So they lied a little bit, but basically I no problem walking across it.
Well, and one of the things that I think of as the ouchies, and I tend to call them fire kisses,
I like your word better.
is that I usually have a reflexology chart handy, and the region, if you do get a burn, you can usually find out why when you look at the reflexology chart. There's usually some reason that whatever system of the body is at that part of your foot might need some support.
Wow.
That's cool.
It is
That
cool.
is.
But
What taught you to see that? What gave you the idea to see that?
Good teachers.
Uh-huh.
My teachers taught me that.
But what I find interesting is that once you've done a firewalk and you get a burn out in the everyday world, you can focus on that burn and make a connection to the fire, and the burn on your hand from that tea kettle goes away.
Yeah, and I teach a technique that works with any kind of burn. It's a Jinshin Jitsu technique that I always teach my firewalking participants. It's you place your hands on a certain part of your body, apply pressure, and if you hold that for a certain period of time, usually whatever fire kiss you have is completely gone the next day.
Or just breathe into it sometimes.
Yeah, there are a lot of different ways to go about it, but this one seems pretty easy for people to grasp.
One part of the body covers a burn anywhere on the body.
Yes. I've seen it work with sunburns, burns from a stove, firewalking burns.
Yeah,
Yeah.
different.
So that's the answer to what do you do when you do get a burn, which was one of my questions.
Yeah, we use that technique, and frankly, we're always set up for if something were to happen.
First aid and stuff.
Yeah, I have a phenomenal fire tending team, and we're ready. You know,
I've never seen anybody
but
get
I
burned.
haven't either. Not really. Not anything that was of any consequence at all. And never in my firewalks have I seen it.
how often do you have these fireworks during the year?
I typically have 2 a year, and then I'm also firewalking with my fire tenders. We're experimenting and training, but 2 public firewalks a year. And so I have 1 in July and 1 in September this year.
Excellent.
Yes.
Are they local?
They are there in Westport, Massachusetts, and so when I drove here today, it was about a half hour into Providence. Very easy location. I hold these at Sisters of Solace, and one of the owners is one of my fire tenders, and it's a phenomenal facility, and it's just perfect for the fireworks.
How many people normally go to one of your fireworks?
My capacity is 30.
Maximum of 30?
Maximum of 30, and so typically it's somewhere between 20 and 30 plus my fire tending
Do
team.
people's energy feed off one another, make it more acceptable?
Yes.
I'm
Yeah, jump on in.
Yeah, I could just the thought of it. I would say that everyone sort of, not only did you become one with the fire, you become one with each other.
A team.
Yes.
Yes.
One woman who has acted as an assistant for me in the past, her mother is a pastor, and she has commented many times at how remarkable it is to see so much community built so quickly in a group.
So why don't we have some of these born-again Christian groups do fireworks?
I'm sure some of them do.
But it would be interesting to tie it in to see what the reaction would be.
What do you think it
They
would be?
empowered.
Well, I think at first they would not think it was part of their religion, and they would really resist it. But then once it was done, then they would have to really stop and think about it.
Well, and think about
The
how many.
Holy
That's the
Spirit
whole thing, is to
protected
make them
them.
think.
Yes. Well, and that's a good point, because how many times do we have a limiting thought, a limiting belief that is completely incorrect,
Or
completely
irrational.
false,
Right.
but it's holding us back anyway. And so this does start the wheels to turning. What can I question in my life? What are the beliefs that hold me back, and how can I move through them effortlessly?
Now, you had talked about bending iron bars, too.
Yes.
The way you were talking, I didn't hear the whole explanation. Explain it so that
Okay.
everybody knows what you're talking about.
So another practice that we have is bending steel bars with our throats. It's similar to the arrow break.
How big around is the steel bar?
Okay, so picture steel rebar, the
Half
kind
inch.
of same about. I think half inch.
Well, they come all
3
different sizes, but that's
3/8,
one of the
maybe
small
half
ones.
inch. But imagine the stuff that reinforces concrete.
It's tough.
It's tough. That's what we're bending with this part of our throats. So
You're doing the same principle as the arrow. You're putting it against your throat and putting it on an object and walking into it and bending it?
well, there are 2 ways to do it. One is to, and this is a 6-foot section of rebar, and you can either put it against your throat and put it against a wall, but my favorite way to do this is to make it a partnership exercise. And so that one person, 2 people. So one person has it on their throat, the other person has it opposite on their throat, and they're going to need to communicate. They're going to need to be connected with one another in this peak state, and when they're ready, they move toward one another and the bar bends.
I was a construction worker, an electrician. I used to bend pipe all the time, and on occasion I've had to bend rebar. Rebar is really hard to bend.
It
I kid
is.
you not.
It
I mean,
is.
I just.
But it happens.
It boggles my mind to think of what you're describing. Okay, here's another question.
Sure.
I can't. Uri Geller, maybe?
Yes.
Uri Geller.
Spoon bending.
With the
Spoon bending. Now, he used to just, stroke his finger. A lot of people did
Yes.
this, whatever. I heard that there was a negative, I don't know if it was people that were trying to discourage people from doing it or what, but they said that they were picking up too much metal into their bodies by bending the spoons and steel.
Well,
I don't know. I
if
mean,
you were
didn't make sense to me.
bending spoons that were lead.
No, I'm talking mostly silver spoons.
Yeah.
And they're saying that the bending the metal was putting too much metal into the people's bodies.
I don't know. I haven't heard that, and I've bent a few spoons.
Are there okay, what I'm trying
I
to
hope
ask
I'm not
is there
at
a
risk.
negative side to bending a metal bars like this?
No, I don't think so. I usually, with the metal bars, because the ends are jagged, I usually put something on the ends of them.
Little caps, yep.
Yeah, little caps, or some people will fold up a dollar bill and use that as a cushion so that people don't get cut. But it's a strong piece of metal.
Oh yeah, I'll guarantee it.
And it's amazing, again, it's amazing to watch people do this in partnership, because it's almost like you can see the connection between the two people.
Now, when you say bending it, I'm assuming it's getting a bow in it. And a 6-foot
Usually
piece is
bends
like
like
from
a
me to
U.
Josie. Okay. When they stop pushing, what happens to the metal? Does it stay in a U or does it go straight again?
It stays in a U. Once it's bent, it's bent.
So is there some kind of interconnection between our mental spiritual process and the metal of the rebar that's causing it to bend and stay that way?
I think that the stay that way, I'm not sure, but the causing it to bend, I think so. I think we do reach an energetic state that perhaps changes the density of the metal, because nothing's solid.
No, nothing's really solid.
You know, I'm not solid, Cher's not solid, Sherry's not
It's all
solid.
molecules,
And
moving slow.
We're mostly made up of space
Vibrations.
and water and vibration. And so is the metal bar. Or not the water part of it, but
I don't know. It's
You know what I find interesting is you're questioning the rebar, but you don't question the fire or the other thing.
Because he hasn't done them.
Ah, but
'Cause
you've
what?
done fire. And, you know, I would think I have yet to do fire. And I say yet because I will, because it is part of my
In the
my growth.
in the fall, it's nice because you get to stay warm.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, to change subject a little bit, if we take that mentality into India, where they do lots of stuff that we kind of shake our heads at.
First, I want to say thank you to our audience for being here tonight, and thank you to Kerry Cudmore, because I know we're going to run out of time. We'll be so fascinated, and that we'll forget to say thank you to everyone. Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Ken. Thank you for being with us. And now we can complete what you started.
To complete it, I wish I had a rebar. I would have brought one for you two guys. But anyway, they do so many bizarre things. You had casually mentioned
The
piercings.
yes.
And over there, I know they do 6-inch spikes through their hands or through the whatever, through their arms. And,
Sure.
and it doesn't bleed afterwards.
No.
Yeah, in all of the depictions of Christ, they don't show blood. They just show holes for his piercings. The only blood was from the body that they show. Thank you again for joining us, and please come back.
Oh, I'd love to.
And we look forward to seeing you for your firewalks at Sisters of Solace.
Yes.
And that was July and
September. July 18th and September 26th.
very good.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Oh,
And
you're
Sister
welcome.
Solace is in Westport.
Westport, Mass.
Excellent.
Is that near the ocean so that after you toast people, they can run in and jump in?
It's about 5 miles away.
Oh, they'd be too toasted by then.
That's funny. Yeah. No, usually don't they have...